We'll do a review of Lekutei Sichas in Chelek Tezvav, the second sicha for the Parsha Breishis. So the Parsha talks about how the Hashem created the moon and the sun and the moon, and how he put them up in the sky. Also, it says that they were put there as signs. And the Gemara says, and Rashi brings it down, the Gemara in Sukkah, that the signs, what are they called for signs? Because they sort of, seems like from the Gemara, that there are certain things that take place with the sun and the moon, the eclipse, the likui chama, likui levana, the eclipse of the sun, the eclipse of the moon. The Jewish people counting to the moon, they go by the lunar cycle of the year, so if there's eclipse of the moon, that's a bad sign for them. If there's eclipse of the sun, it's a bad sign for the nations of the world. The Rebbe's question is here, and this was probably, the Rebbe brings down, this was something which many people used against the Torah to show that, God forbid, that the words of our sages aren't really authentic, because the eclipses are a matter of nature. Those times are defined, and we know exactly when eclipse is going to take place and when it's going to happen. How could that be a sign for anything when it's predetermined? It's the destiny. And the Rebbe explains that, this is really, just with a little bit of attention, you can see that this is not, first of all, the Rebbe says that the sages, according to all views, the sages had a very close relationship with the philosopher, with the scientists of the time, and the astronomy. And for sure, even if we should say that it was by the scientists who came up with and the rabbis learned it from them, but certainly the rabbi knew it. So you can't say that they didn't know and they wrote in the Gemara something which is not true. And the Rebbe explains that what it really means is there are certain times which are prone to be a bad sign for the non-Jews. The Rebbe will explain, but it doesn't mean that, of course, these are natural phenomena, but they have a certain time and a certain period where it brings out these signs, as the Gemara says over there. But he basically says that from here you can see that a lot of times people come up with questions, but it's not really questions. People don't want to do Torah mitzvahs for whatever reason, their desires for their typhus, and they excuse it by saying, "Oh, we have a question. Look, the sages, what they said." That's not really at all the case. It's just a matter of trying to harness yourself for doing the right things. And then the questions you can, with very easy look into them, you will come to the answer. But let's look inside. This is in sicha Breishis. This is the second sicha for the Parshas Breishis. Now, in the Gemara over here, this is the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Ton Rabbanon is man shacham aloike, when the sun is eclipsed, is siman ra, leiv dikachavim." That goes a bad sign for the dikachavim. Levonu loike. If the moon, on the other hand, is eclipsed, then it's a siman ra l'sheneim shel Yisrael. That's a bad sign for the Jewish people. Calls it l'sheneim shel Yisrael, not wanting to say for Yisrael, but it means for the Yid. And the reason why does the sun represent the Goyim, the Chavim, and the Levana, the Yidden, because we count for the moon, the Chavim and the Goyim for the sun. And then the various things where it's like it, where it takes place. And finally, the Gemara also says that that we don't have to worry when we do the will of Hashem. We don't have to worry about only of these things. Don't follow the ways of the goyim. So then you won't have to fear the signs of the heaven, the sun, the moon. You don't have to fear them. The goyim should fear them. So therefore, it's only the goyim that have to worry about that. So here we see that this eclipse is something which is a bad sign. So let's look inside. Aleph. On the verse, let there be ma'iris. So it Rashi and they will be for signs. In other words, that the sun and the moon, they do tell us about the day, the different things that they serve. But one of the things is they're also la'oises, they're a sign. What is this signs? Rashi out of the Maimer Chazal. So Rashi brings down the saying of our sage the lesson memories. This is from the Gemara in Sukkah. That Kshama'oiris loikim simanu rahu loilam. When the luminaries, sun, the moon, get smitten, eclipsed, that's a sign, a bad sign for the world. Shenemar, the Pasuk says, first it says later on, from the signs of the heavens, Rashi says, you will not fear, meaning that the Oisis Hashemayim, the eclipses, the liquid, the loikin, there's something to be worried about. You don't have to worry about it. When you do the will of Hashem, then you don't need to worry for any punishment. Back in the Sibir Favos the loikin. So what is the reasoning? Why do these luminaries get eclipsed? So the Gemara, then the Gemara says, which we didn't bring down before, the Gemara gives reasonings why it happens. The Gemara says that various different things, what happened. 4 things, head of a basin who died, who wasn't eulogized. That would be the reason for the sun eclipsing. And then for 4 things, the Iris Lakim is further. So the Gemara says over there, why the Iris Lakim? Zog the Gemara b'shul arba dvarim. Chama loikim. For alav beis in shemeis be'nispat kalocha, a head of the court who died and he wasn't properly eulogized, etc. And then it says b'shul arba dvarim Iris Lakim. That's specifically the sun. But the luminaries in general get smitten. People who write bad things, etc. The Gemara brings down various different things over there. Does haste. But basically what it means, adelikui hama'uris is verbunden mit ma'aseh b'nei adam. That means that the action of people impact. It's connected to the act of people. So when the luminaries are smitten, or the sun, the moon, those are actions of people that cause that. That's what it seems like. Because the Gemara says that's what the eclipse happens. Is you do the kashya, so the known question, it's known, thus was Ma'iris Loikim, the fact that the luminaries are smitten, eclipsed, Liquid Chama Levona, the eclipse of the sun or the eclipse of the moon, is an eingestellte Zach in Tava Habriya. This is something which is set in the nature of creation, but often in such a way as they come in bestimmte Zeiten, they come in specific times. Bis as man can for us rechnen, you can in advance calculate when they're going to happen. So how could the Gemara say that the sun is going to be smitten because of 4 things that were done, or the Ma'iris Loikim, or the luminaries get smitten because of something? This is something which has to take place. This is the rules of nature. And we cannot prevent this. So what does it mean that because there are 4 things that you did, this is going to happen? That's going to happen regardless. This is not something that you can prevent. So now the Rebbe is going to say that people use this as an excuse to, God forbid, say that the words of the rabbis are not authentic, and the Rebbe is going to show it's impossible that to say that the rabbis didn't know this. Gevisa mentioned certain people, so during many generations, they use this question as beweis, they use this as evidence, proof, as chas v'sholom, God forbid, nicht alt versteht in Chazal is richtig, not everything that says in our sages of blessed memory, what they wrote is really true. And using that argument, and this is the way they justify their conduct from chas v'sholom, God forbid, nicht mekayim zeh Torah mitzvahs, not to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. They said, well, not all the words of the rabbis are true. The Rebbe is over, however, the truth is, as those was einer is that mekayim Torah mitzvahs. Why someone does not observe Torah mitzvahs is as need to live seine sicha dike kashis. It's not because he has logical questions, nor mitzad der l'tiyoven from seine midas. That comes because of his own midas, his desires. Und die Kashi seinen an Ausreit, and these questions are just an excuse, so for Antros and an Hagos like in the boy to excuse himself, to answer, to rationalize his non-proper conduct. So therefore, for them it's sufficient. If they're just looking for justification, they're just looking for something. So for them it's sufficient to prove the point. Hazak Kasha is such a question. Was with just a little reflection, you see, as the kasha there's no substance to the question. By introduction. Everyone wants to say you can't say that the rabbis didn't know that this doesn't really fit. Hakol Moedim, it is agreed by everyone, as in the Zeiten from the Tanoim v'Amoraim, that during the periods, the times in which the Tanoim and Amoraim they lived, is the cheshbon azmanim for the likuye chama v'levonosh given mefursam zwischen the chachma yumas, the calculation, the times when the eclipses are going to take place for the sun and the moon, that was already very public knowledge amongst the nations of the world. This is no question, no doubt about this, that it was known. Anybody who has an acquaintances, knowledge of the history, of the Jewish history, from the Sipurim was gebracht in Divrei Chazal, from the stories that are brought down by our sages of blessed memory, and even more detail from the Sifrei Divrei Yom Mahem, from the books that describe the history of those days, the general books. So anyone who knows, has any acquaintances, knows, is familiar at all with history, knows as the Chachmei Umas Ha'olam, that the wise, the scientists, the wise of the secular, the world, they were there, they were standing in a very close connection. They were connected in Inyoni Chochmah matters of wisdom and science, with the Chachmei Yisrael, with the Jewish wise, with the Jewish sages. There was interaction over there. They conducted debates in all Chochmas, in all types of different, we find in the Gemara, various different places, in all kinds of sciences and all kinds of wisdoms. And also in the science from that involves a whole (12, 13). This Ein Maschilin Bebeis V'Daled is brought down in Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea with regards to starting a project, but based on the Gemara in Psachim, that this is not a good mazel time. So, but the Rebbe says that when do we see is not vendos is nid b'stirat mavin ala mitzvahs, which he brings down from the Sefer Hasidim and other places that you're not going to worry about it if this is going to cause you that you're going to not do the mitzvah in the right time because you're not going to start with the project. You're going to worry about the not starting something on Monday and Thursday. It won't apply. So basically saying it's not a have to, it's better not to. That's not the right time if you can. If there is the proper effort, you can have success even in a day which is sort of designated, we say, is considered a Yom Chayim. Based on this, we can say, as the Pshat in the Maimer, Siman Rahul Oilam, what does it mean that when the luminaries are smitten, that's a bad sign for the world? Is nit noras is as man from Poronis. It's not only that it's a time for punishment. To punish for a improper conduct, noradosis as man, but that's a time when by mention the by the person, it wakes naturally by from the yuchad in a specific way, and a tilting, a leaning, person is drawn to a non-good conduct. Das ist aber nicht in an Öfen, but it's not in a way, was is imachriach, it doesn't force him to that conduct. Because the person has the power, he has the strength to overcome this leniency, this leaning that he's leaning, this pull, or the desires that are in those days are more prevalent. When the Rebbe is meduik loshen in a moshel, and the mit is meduik, this is also the accuracy, the specific, the exact language in the moshel, because the Gemara brings an inyan for likui chama. The Gemara brings a example for the eclipse of the sun. Melech b'osav adam she'osa suda la'avodov, a king of flesh and blood, a human being that who makes a meal for his servants. And he put a light in front of them. So he got angry. So he says to his servant, take away the light from him. This haste. As the tul panas chulu vert giton, that this taking away of the light is done, nid durch melech alein. It's not the king himself, nor durch avde, it's a servant. While their likui v'simen raf and them zman, because the smitting and the bad sign of the time is not an inyan shemitzad hateva, nature, avde shel melech. It's a difficult time. Und der Loshen b'shvil arbot vorim chamaloike, when we say that the language that it's smitten for main nit as the likui hamaoidus doesn't mean that the eclipse of the luminaries is to leave their nit gutar and hoge bepoil in the dal vorim. That is because of the non-good conduct actually in these four things. Because they did it, that's what's going to happen. Not as to leave them, but that because of this eclipse that is taking place anyway, to leave them was in them man is do. Because the reason why there is an eclipse, because during that time is there is a leaning and a pull, drawing to these four matters that the luminaries are smitten. Based on the Bible, also understand the novelty was that only by the Yidden is said, Al techatu, no worry. As opposed to Akum. If it's a time that we have to worry about it because there's a leniency, there is a nature, yes, we're not forced, but why does a guy have to worry and not the Even though that also the akum, the nations of the world can overpower the on the natural tendencies, leniencies, that they're leaning, but this man is good, and at the time causes them and to conduct themselves properly. Because although they don't have full, true idea of choosing, but they're still not going to be punished. Only if they do it sin on their own, not because they're forced because of the bad timing or whatever, or the likui chama. Von deswegen, die Balda, sie seien untergeworfen in der Hockes Hateva. But since they are under the conduct of nature, they need great effort, a lot of hard work to mevatel sein the teva, to nullify that nature. And therefore, that's what the goyim need to be feared. They are afraid from those lean, the way they lean for nature, because they'll have to have a strong battle to overcome it. As opposed to they have an addition in their service of Hashem. Hecher from the meditas v'agbolos from Zeir Teva, which is higher than the limitations and the measures of their nature. They do Hashem's will. Hecher from Teva, they are higher than nature. Also from the signs of the heaven. When the father is ain, they're not to be afraid from all this. Not only can they overpower nature, by effort and putting forth energy to take away the nature, they don't count, they don't consider, they don't take into consideration to begin with, not the Shemayim, not the signs of heaven. Maschilin, they can start on Mondays and Wednesdays, not like worrying about the bad fortune on Monday and Tuesdays, but to a situation in a situation that you don't have to consider the conduct of nature at all. The Ebershus and Hogam Tzadikim, it becomes the way the Ebershter conducts them with the righteous, meaning all Yidden. In a miraculous conduct, revealed miraculous conduct, which is beyond nature. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parsha Shlach Tov Shin Lamed Hey.